what I'm going to demonstrate today is sort of a fast track to Lovable. These are the secrets.
Lazar, great to have you on the pod.
Thanks, man. And very, very excited that we actually have the chance to do it this way. We'll talk, I guess, a little bit more about the origin of our friendship. For me, it's just a full circle moment. So I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, likewise. No, keen to touch on that. But yeah, would love to share in your own words, if you could, to the audience, who you are, a little bit about your background, and how you became a professional VibeCoder at Lovable.
Yeah, so you pretty much hinted the core part of it. I am a first official professional VibeCoder at Lovable. Obviously, everybody at Lovable vibe codes. I'm the one that actually gets paid to do only that. So that's kind of the perk of my title. All day long, what I do is just wake up, open a couple of Lovable tabs, and just ship things, right? Anything from internal tools that we need in GTM or marketing or any other department, all the way to building external facing templates for people to remix, reuse, and get inspired on what's possible. And then finally, sort of as a mini side quest, but also somewhat in an official capacity, I'm creating educational resources for Lovable, because my personal passion is that as somebody who wanted to build his whole life and never had a chance to, due to life circumstances, learn how to code, I just want to find more Lazars out there and just give them the resources so that they don't have to go through the pain that I've gone through for the past 18 to 24 months, since that's been kind of the time frame within which I've started doing vibe coding. So I'm recording a YouTube series and series of LinkedIn posts. Specifically now, as we're recording this, the series is called 28 Days of Lovable. So throughout the entire month of February, I'm trying to drop a bite-sized 10, 15, sometimes 20-minute lesson on how you can achieve success and share some of the best practices when it comes to using.
That's awesome. So cool. And so much to unpack there. Well, we'll definitely include the link to the 28 Days of Lovable. Trying to follow on, but my understanding is going to still be there after.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of themed because February is, I feel like a lot of people have New Year's resolutions that they just quit on by February 1st. So I was like, it doesn't have to be like that. Like, just because you've stopped doing one thing, that doesn't mean you shouldn't start another in February. I feel like February is usually the worst month of the year for many people. The weather sucks. You spent a lot of money during the holidays. I just feel like for a lot of folks, they need that little bit of motivation. And I guess my personal goal is to try and be that person that is pushing them over the edge and over the line to try something new that will hopefully, for some of them, become a passion and life calling like it was for me.
Amazing. I do want to touch on some of that background in a second, but just before we do, if you could just share with the audience now what you'll be walking us through today, and what's the big thing that they're going to take away from the session.
Yeah. So, I've gained a little bit of popularity lately over some of appearances that I've had. And the biggest piece of feedback that I get from people is that, the information is useful, but people want to see it. People want to see me do it versus talking about it. So today is going to be a show, don't tell type of a session where I'm actually going to show people how I build. Obviously, there's always nuances, and we can't, even if we sat for 20 hours straight, I would always have another piece of the workflow that wasn't covered. So I'm not going to cover everything that I do, but I will cover the essentials, what I feel is the most critical knowledge that people should have about building with Lovable, and just understanding the limitations of AI and humans today, right? I think that the topic for me is really understanding that these tools are only as powerful as we are in our ability to master them. And whatever is true today will probably not be true 3 to 6 months from now, but I'm just trying to set people up for success. So today, as you said, my hope is that somebody watches this and they feel much more confident building something real and something big on Lovable.
Amazing. Super excited. Super excited, and your t-shirt is on point as well. It's great that you're on. I love the show don't tell piece. So I think a lot of people are going to take huge amount away from this. Um, yeah, I'd love to also just share a little bit about how we met as well, because I'm a very novice vibe coder still, but that's how we met, wasn't it? On the first iteration of the vibe coding sprint at Starter Story.
Yep, exactly. And for me, that was, I think, the most pivotal moment, and like the main reason why I enjoyed this conversation is because it's a reflection for me of just honestly, the in all modesty, the progress that I've made over this past 12 months. Because we met, I think, approximately a year ago, when, as you pointed out, as a result of just the sheer need and demand, in collaboration with our great friend Pat Walls from Starter Story, we started this whole concept of like, hey, why don't we also do the show don't tell? Let's not tell stories of entrepreneurs building, let's actually help people build. So, Pat had this amazing idea of like, hey, let's collaborate and build like a Lovable course and let's see how it goes. Like, my expectations were very minimal, I have to say, and not to mention the fact that I've never produced anything similar prior to it. Like, it was a pretty comprehensive video series, like I'd say 30, 35 videos, very long format, very deep, right? Trying to teach people something that, quite honestly, I was just figuring out myself. Like, for me, that was the meta part, that it's like, it's not like I had 10 years of experience doing this. So I'm like teaching people the best practices. I had no idea what I was doing. Like, I was literally sometimes figuring out stuff as I was recording or as I was preparing to record a session. I'm figuring out different angles and simpler ways to deliver something. So, as you said, like, we had a massive success with it. So many people signed up, and you were among the people that did. And for me, that first cohort is special because I just wasn't aware how big of an unlock this was for people. That, like, you had great ideas yourself. You built one of the best apps to this day that I dearly remember with Racket Pass. Like, I didn't know that stuff that you built were possible either, which is, again, a proof of something that I've been saying a lot these days on everywhere where you can see me or read what I'm saying, which is like, not having technical background comes somewhat as an advantage, because it's not the most technical person that always has the best ideas in the room. Not to say that being a developer is bad or anything, but it's more like there's always been a Jimmy or a Lazar somewhere sitting and pondering on this idea, and they just didn't have the means to do it unless they invested significant amount of time into developing the skill. And now that amount of time to develop it has shrunk to hours, really, right? Maybe even 1 hour, right? My goal is to shrink it to, like, we do one show and tell, and somebody just figured out, like, hey, this is the last piece that I needed. So the origin of the story, how we met, I said it in a long-winded way, but yeah, I don't know how it feels for you. For me, it feels very important, monumental, because for me, it gave me two things, right? It gave me the proof that I'm not the only crazy guy feeling that this is the future. And then secondly, it just like gave me that motivation to continue, because a lot of times when you're all by yourself, right, in this, you don't know if you're the crazy one, and you don't know if it will amount to anything. A lot of people approach me these days asking me like, what should I do to get hired, or what should I do to be you? Like, what they don't understand is that being me came not a week ago. I'm doing this for 2 years now, pretty much, right? And first 12 months, nobody cared, nobody even noticed. Like, I had a YouTube channel, I was publishing tutorials, less than 100 views, right? And I invest a massive amount of time and credits and everything, the energy into it, right? So I think for me, that was the pivotal moment, that first cohort where I was like, there was, I think, a couple of hundred of people. I was like, this is crazy. I mean, that so many people first want to do this. And then secondly, that like all of you guys are showing up on these calls and telling me all your stories and like what this means to you. And I'm like, oh my God, like, this is not about me at all. Like, this is really about all of them. So it gave me that resilience and strength and grit that I needed in order to persist when things were hard and things are not always easy. So
Mhm.
I guess I have a lot of people to thank for that opportunity, including yourself.
But yeah, likewise. I mean, yeah, and thanks to you as well for building that out, and Pat, right? Because it was a huge unlock. in terms of what's this thing called Lovable, but actually to have something guided, which hopefully is what we're sort of trying to create a little snippet of today. As you said, a huge unlock. And shout out to Dave, who was there with me at the time to sort of build the first iteration out. And what I would say, even from that, was a big unlock for me. Great to hear it was the same for you. I since sort of continue that process thereafter, and what I ended up finding is, being from a non-technical background, it was still difficult to build, and there was still like lots of bugs as the product. So I sort of went away from Lovable, and actually more recently came back to it. And because it was about a year ago that we were vibe coding then, coming back to it more recently, I was shocked at how much the product has come up along. And yeah, as you said, the power in your hands to be able to literally think about something you want to create and the potential to actually build it in such a short space of time. The product is, been really, really, really impressed as to where it's at now. So full circle for me as well. And thank you again. Yeah, obviously just come off the back of Lenny's podcast. So also honored that you're actually spending some time with me to actually showcase my podcast. So I'll leave it there and hand over to you to kick us off.
Yeah, sounds good. Yeah, I mean, as you pointed out, before I kick things, as you pointed out, before I kickstart things for us, I did want to mention, as you said, that as you acknowledged, the product is so much different than maybe somebody watching things. Like maybe we're talking to somebody or somebody's listening in and they are a Jimmy that started this journey a year ago, a year and a half ago. And yes, it was probably a little bit more painful than it is today, but like just recent updates from Lovable, the whole plan mode and having the ability to queue the prompts, browser testing, and the fact that Lovable now can perform end-to-end tests for you, split your database environments from live and beta and back around again, or all the seamless connectors. Like if you want to add payments, you can do that in one click. If you want to add Google Auth, you can do that in one click. And you almost don't need any API keys for like things like Perplexity or Firecrawl, like depending on what people want to build and want to do. So many great things just in the last month or so that got out, not to mention the last 6, right? I feel that obviously things get better the more powerful models we have in place too. So to acknowledge the labs for building amazing models recently as well. But all in all, the experience of using Lovable has been dramatically better, I wish to believe, for everybody. However, there are still certain things that we need to solve for that are not Lovable problems. They are problems beyond it. And that's what I want to talk about today. And I'm going to start sharing my screen. And as usual, when I build stuff to explain Lovable, I build them as Lovable apps, right? I'm using Lovable to explain Lovable. I think that's probably what I like to do the most, if you ask me. And what I'm going to demonstrate today is sort of a fast track to Lovable. It's not totally a beginner type of a course or interactive lesson, to be fair. It's kind of an intermediate. So it requires that, you may have used it in the past, or maybe you just registered, but like you at least have a sense of what Lovable is versus what isn't. I'm going to give access, by the way, just to say to you and all the viewers, access to this builder companion. So I didn't build this for me, I built it for you guys. So you can always click on this little deck to learn what Lovable is and what Lovable isn't. And you can see that I built this deck as well in Lovable. Lovable is an amazing tool for building slides. This is where you can start to understand what are the problems and what are the topics that we're going to be covering and talking about today, and just get a glimpse of what Lovable is. What we're going to do actually is we're going to do sort of a 9-step fast track mission, as I like to call them, to teach you to talk a little bit more about what are we actually trying to do here and what vibe coding really today is about. And that's what I cover in this step before we even begin. As you pointed out, I'm coming off of being on Lenny's podcast, and we spent most of the time there talking about this, right? I want to double down on it. Even though it may sound repetitive, my hope is that it is, because it needs to be repeated as many times as possible. All that vibe coding is really, from my point of view, is objection handling, or, you solving for certain challenges, going over certain obstacles, right? And there are two challenges that I see as the biggest ones today when building with Lovable or any other AI tool. The first one is the AI memory problem. The second one is the human prompting problem, right? In the first problem, AI has a limited context window. What that means is if you make a request, Lovable or any other tool can remember, read, compress, execute, like perform certain tasks, but the amount of tasks that it can perform is finite, right? And that's something that people need to be aware. We currently denominate that in tokens. And again, I've used this arbitrary number often of 100,000 tokens, but it doesn't matter what the number is. What matters is that once your agent reaches the end of that window, it is incapable of proceeding forward without your further instructions. And that's what we as humans need to understand. Speaking of humans, we are the second part of the problem, so to speak. Because guess what? I didn't go to school to become a vibe coder. There's currently no official education on this. So I don't know how to prompt. And probably most of you don't either. We are not taught on how to provide context to AI, right? AI takes context from humans as an input so that it knows how to use that memory window the best. So if the context input is bad, meaning if your prompt is bad, your output would probably not be great either, right? So all I do is obsess over how do I solve for both of these problems. And my hope is that in today's mission and the way we do it today will get us closer to that, get you guys closer to it as well, right? Or at least get you to think more about it, right? And specifically, the way I solve it today is by simply documenting my build and orchestrating the agent to follow documentation so that I can eliminate myself out of prompting as much as possible. I'm going to stop now, Jimmy, before we proceed, just to see if you have any follow-ups. I want to make it interactive. You're the voice of the audience here, so I want you to assume that role and kind of feel free to interrupt and jump in and comment or ask anything.
Awesome, Lazar. Yeah, no, that sounds great, and amazing that you've got something that is shareable that will obviously be shared, and we can then follow along and actually build our own apps. Would you be building anything in particular as we go, or is it sort of take through? So that's we'll get a glimpse to actually
Yeah.
live.
There's no. I mean, we said it's a show and tell. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna begin showing people immediately, right, and showing them through what are we really doing here, right? Essentially, I ended step one talking about context, which is a great gateway coming into step two, right? Context is everything. Now, a lot of people, when you say context is everything, that doesn't mean too much to them. Didn't mean anything to me either. So, what I was starting to practice and what I'm still trying to perfect is how do I translate something as vague as context into something that I can always replicate no matter what I'm building? And I think this is what helped me a lot. I'm just asking myself these questions anytime before I start building anything, really. What am I solving for in the first place, right? If you don't know how to define features and pages, you don't need to know that. What you do need to know is why are you even doing what you're doing, right? That's the first question. Why am I doing it? Who am I doing it for? Meaning, who else is feeling this pain? Ideally, you're solving a problem that's worth solving for in the first place. And what I mean by that isn't that, oh, I'm solving world hunger. That is a very important problem to solve. But realistically, what you're going to be solving first and foremost is your own personal problem. And I think the best builds come from solving personal problems because you know what the solution should feel like, right? So in that sense, you first think about why am I doing it and who are you doing it for? And then what needs to happen for this to feel good experience? How does it look like? How does it feel? How I think that a big part of why I'm successful is because I also understand that AI has this limitation of being, from my point of view, very eager to write any kind of code And then secondly, simply understanding how to solve math problems, but not understanding how something magical feels like, as I pointed out again at Lenny's, which is like this paradigm between, using AI to translate words from one language to another versus using it to write jokes. It's two complete different shifts. You're still writing words, but they have a completely different meaning for humans. And I think that's where you, me, or anyone else should learn how to excel. When you're crafting your problem solution statements, really spending enough time to provide context for AI, how that should feel like, right? Because AI can't read the room. AI cannot yet understand your users and their needs to a T, right? It's getting better at it, right? So like your prompt then, because I think people are thinking, okay, if this is the input, like how it's supposed to be structured, could look something like this, really. You need to specify what you're building, where you're building it for, the problem it solves, who's going to use it, core workflows, success criteria. And today specifically, I've picked to actually solve work related problems. Like a lot of people maybe watching this are thinking, okay, we're going to uncover the next $1 million idea. And I want to say, unfortunately, that's probably not going to be the case. But I'm going to give you something actionable because here's something that I'm getting asked a ton these days. How do you get hired as a vibe coder? That's the number one question in my inbox today, right? And the answer is very simple, actually. You hire yourself. And what I mean by that is you go into your workspace today, because everybody probably has some kind of a job, hopefully, and you identify problems in 5 different departments or 6. Today, we can explore 6 of them: marketing, sales, ops, finance, HR, IT. We're going to pick one. I'm probably going to go with HR because I feel like everybody understands HR and everybody gets like human resources aspect of things. Find a problem they're worth solving for and just build a lovable app for it. Then go and just give it to the manager, right? Explain them how they can use it and monitor their usage. Then do that for your marketing lead. Then do that for your finance lead. Eventually, you'll have a case study that you can then go and present to your senior management. Come in there, schedule a meeting and say, here's how I've optimized workflows for 6 different departments. And here's how much money and time that's saved over the past 3 months. Right? If you show proof and then come in with the pitch of, hey, I want to build a whole department for this. I think this should be something that we do across the board. Make me a lead of our AI transformation, or make me an AI transformation head or a manager, and I will form a whole department and an entire roadmap, and I'll help hire people, and I'm going to train the entire company to build on Lovable or any other tool. And guess what's going to happen? You're probably going to get a yes because you took action on your own. You've actually provided proof that it works. And guess what's going to happen next too? Because there's no job description for this, you're actually going to write it yourself. You're going to decide what you want to do. And even better, because there are no industry benchmarks, you can almost decide how much you're going to get paid for it too, right? Because there is no millions of vibe coders there so that your hiring manager can go in and like estimate how much they should be paying you to do it. You're actually going to be able to demonstrate the value that you're giving in your organization yourself and get yourself not just hired, but even determine your own pay structure, right? So that's why I wanted to spend, I know it's a bit of a big intro, but the main reason why we do this today, the way we're going to do it is exactly this. My hope is somebody DMs you, Jimmy, and tells you, I went through it. I did exactly what he said. I went to my manager. I got a raise. I got this. I got that. I'm a vibe coder at my company, right? That's how it all should start, right? So let's kick things off from there, and let's define a problem for HR that every HR manager probably has, right? You get a lot of new people coming into your org, and you want to build sort of an onboarding portal for them, right? To onboard new hires, you get 50 new people, you have to manually go through different software, right? As you can see, if you click on any of these, just try to use them as a template to start thinking about how to form your problem statements. Maybe you don't want to build any of this. That's fine. The goal is to just start thinking in systems and not think that, oh, I'm just coming into a build and I'm just always brain dumping my thoughts and opinions. Even though I'm not against that, I'm still a fan of the notion of like having some idea of what you want to accomplish. From here, I'm just going to click copy, and I'm going to pass it to you, Jimmy, in a second. I'm just going to go over to Lovable, and I'm going to paste this prompt in. But instead of just sending it away, I want to teach people a couple of new things as well. Number one is you can click on this plan button, and that basically triggers a planning mode. What planning mode allows you to do in Lovable is use it as a brainstorming partner and not just as a coding partner. Like if you just send prompts to Lovable, you're treating it as a junior engineer. But Lovable is so much more powerful than that, right? It can be it can assume a much more important role in your entire process. So I'm just going to send this prompt away as a planning mode thing. And I'm going to pass it to you, Jimmy, while Lovable is building the plan alongside me, just to see if you had any, again, questions, comments, or yeah.
Love that. Yeah, it's such a good point, right? Because there's when AI came along, big worry about AI is going to replace our jobs, all that kind of stuff. But seems to be more and more those people that know how to use AI are going to be in the strongest position, right? So, like you said there, if you're able to learn how to build internal systems or learn how to use Lovable to build workflows and things like that, and take that to your department, amazing way to sort of transition into that role or be that person that people start to lean on. So yeah, amazing approach, and I think a great place for us to start.
Yeah, 1,000,000%. And speaking of starting, this is why I like starting in plan mode. Because when you start in plan mode, Lovable understands that you're now treating it the way it should be treated, which is your builder companion. And the first thing you're going to notice, maybe some people will get these, maybe they won't, doesn't matter. When Lovable wants you to participate alongside it, it's going to ask you questions to make technical decisions together. When you're unsure how to treat those, you can skip answers. You don't have to answer it, and then Lovable will assume the happy path for you and make these decisions. But what I think is critical is just understanding that notion. Hey, this is not just a random coding tool. This is really your best friend, right? I'm going to use a lot of voice prompting today. I'm a big fan of that. So I use a tool called Whisperflow. So, if you see me dictating, it feels a little bit weird and wonky, that's simply because it's much faster and better than me typing. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a decision on my behalf and say, this is a demo app. We're just doing this to showcase the power of Lovable, so we don't need any authentication right now. So I'm just making a technical decision that I'm going to treat this as a demo app. Then I'm not going to build any notifications. We can build this as kind of a professional style, and we want to, start slow, right? And I think a lot of people should understand this importance of this. You need to set your expectations right. And you shouldn't want to have a tool that builds everything from one prompt. A lot of people have, expectations that, oh, my plan is so good, it should just execute on it. I would heavily disagree against that because number one, you don't know what you don't know when you're starting, right? You want to almost have this session where you're just prototyping things, really, right? I kind of, when I build things, I start 4 or 5 builds in parallel. I spoke about that at Lenny's too, like where I don't know what I'm doing. I almost never know what I'm doing when I start. So what I want is variety. What I want is to try different things and angles. I don't need a finished product. What I need is clarity. And what you need is clarity. You need to know and understand what you want to achieve out of all of this. So whenever you're offered this start simple or build everything, always go with simple and then build on top of it, really. And as you can see, Lovable answers my questions and then based off of that, like gives me a full comprehensive plan. So that's one of those new features that I was bringing up, which is, hey, this is not a gimmick and it's not a tool that you need to arm wrestle with. You're working alongside it. You can read the plan and you can edit the plan as well, right? Directly in here, right? If you are okay with it, or if you're not, you can decline or approve. Personally, most of the times I approve the plan simply because, and again, you can obviously make it look whichever way you like it to, obviously. Most times I approve plans because I understand that what comes after this matters more. right? I just want to see that we're on the same page, very high level. This doesn't have to be perfect because this is not what determines your success. Everything that comes after is what will determine success. So I'm going to approve the plan. I'm just going to let Lovable start building because while Lovable is building this, I want to go back to my companion and then really start leveraging and harnessing its power and solving for that first problem. Because right now we haven't solved that much yet. We hopefully solved the two beginner problems for people, which is what am I supposed to build and how am I supposed to define that? Right? High level. So, I mean, that is a big problem and a big unlock for a lot of people already. But for me, it's not what gets you to the end. It's what's helping you get started, right? As you saw, like I just had this very basic workflow. I have a build that's pending. That's great. You're already miles ahead, but you're not going to have a full build that scales with just that. So I'm going to copy this prompt again, said that I'm defined my problem, and then I'm going to start solving for the first limitation we talked about, which was the AI context window and just context in general, right? If you know that memory is finite, right? And if you know that it's not dynamic, the question becomes, how do I solve that problem, right? And same way like with humans, like I really treat AI and always have treated it as a human, much smarter one than I am, but like just at the same way as a human would. If I was trying to explain something to someone and I wanted them to persist the knowledge over a longer period of time, I need to document it, right? I need a reference point of some kind. We all use these note takers. Why do we use them? Well, we use them so that we can reference them back again a month from now because nobody remembers what they talked about a month ago. Same is true with AI. It will not remember every prompt after you've reached prompt 50 or prompt 100. It will have some breadcrumbs, but it's not enough. You need to have a persistent memory layer. And to maintain a memory layer to the best of my ability, from what I've known and got success with, Lovable or any other tool, is by building what's known as PRDs. PRDs are essentially, in product development terms, project required documents. They break your project down into smaller chunks and provide certain definitions. And when I build my PRDs, I usually build 4 of them, basically. At least. You can build more, but 4 is a pretty good start, right? To kind of have something to go off of. I start with a master plan, which is the product North Star. We identify and defining what are we building. Like, doesn't have to be detailed. Again, 10,000-foot overview, because that first prompt that I just sent, that will be forgotten 10 prompts later. So I need something to reaffirm it and kind of hit the nail in the head for in perpetuity for my project. Now, when we have that, the question becomes, okay, how are we going to build it from start to finish? In what order? And that's what the implementation plan is about, right? We're breaking everything down, listing core features, the requirements, like we're just putting things in a good order, right? I emphasize this already, and I will talk about it in perpetuity. The biggest winners of AI will be great designers, people that understand what magical looks like. I'm not one of them yet. I'm hoping to become that person. In that process, I understand more and more that defining your brand and UX guidelines as early as possible is key. That's why we have that document as well. And then finally, we have to tie it all together in the way, not just how things will look, but the way they will feel. I talked about that as well earlier. Feeling your app from start to finish, screen by screen, matters. And in that sense, what I'm going to do is I'm going to build these PRDs. And you can, if you're like using my companion, you can take 2 directions here, really. One direction is you copy this and you actually have Lovable build these PRDs for you. And by the way, Lovable is done building the basics of our app. As you can see, just very high level, nothing crazy, doesn't look beautiful. Like, that's something that I can work on later down the road. I just needed a foundation to help me start working through things a little bit. But if we're honest, Jimmy, me and you, when we first started off, this was pretty awesome to have as your end product. Now it's your first prompt,
Totally.
right? So like, let's just acknowledge the leap.
Mhm.
A year ago, I know that this would be this is a finished product. I can go and present this, right? And we're just getting
True.
started.
So true. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
So from here,
expectation.
as I said, like two paths. One is you ask Lovable to do it in here, right? Which is what I'm going to do now, just to show you that Lovable can do that as well. Um, the other path would be to generate your PRDs using my companion. So just again, you paste your prompt that we had in step 2, which is here. Like for us, we were doing the HR app. So copy that prompt. We have a problem definition. And then in here, we use that prompt as an input, right? Because it's an input output equation. If you want to create these docs, you need something as a reference point. What is the project we're building this for? And then just click generate, right? This is another powerful feature of Lovable. Lovable is now using its own AI to generate this, right? So I didn't need an API key. I didn't need anything to bring AI functionality into Lovable. When me and you were in the starter story first iteration, you remember to just enable AI, you needed to have a Supabase account. Then go to OpenAI and get an API key, then add it through Supabase, then build the edge function, then do the API. Like it was a 6-7 step process, right? And it was fun. You're solving a problem, you're learning a new skill, but now it's give me AI, and Lovable just does it and it works. And as you can see here, because I'm not going to show these in my Lovable build, I'm going to show you right here what we built together. We just defined what are we doing here. We're talking about why are we building it, what are the jobs to be done, what's the acceptance criteria, even the data models. And again, this is where I like to leverage AI because we didn't talk about this, but people that know me know this. I'm not a developer. I don't know how to write code and I don't know how to write these things. I'm relying on AI and I'm putting my faith that AI is good at this, or at least better than I am, right? Again, implementation, same thing. We're talking about how is this going to be implemented? What are the phases, as you can see? What are the tasks? Here, Lovable is becoming my uh, product and project manager for me, right?
Mhm.
It's doing the heavy lifting. Then the design, right? Defining the typography system, the color system with semantic tokens. I mean, I would never be able to write this. This would take forever to do. And it was one click of a button based on the context that I provided about my build, right? Obviously, this companion app requires some training in order to produce this, but even that was done mostly by AI, if I'm being honest. I'm there just to observe and tweak the behavior. Again, same thing here on the app flow. We're just defining why do these pages even exist? Because I told you one thing to be very cautious and honest about is AI is eager to write code. AI is eager to create. Your job is to contain that creativity. You need to make it stop. You actually need to deduct more than ask to build more. It used to be the other way around. You needed to ask for so much. Now you're actually a deductor. You're actually the one that needs to start removing things because people don't like clicking, right? You need to figure out the easiest happy path for your project. And that's something that AI is still not great at, mostly because, again, its job is to build, not deduct. Right. Let's go back here and confirm and affirm that we now have 4 PRDs created. Right. So we're already like steps ahead of the curve where most people would be by just thinking in terms of, oh, I'm actually building something as in the form of a plan. I'm actually building something that will be sustainable over a longer period of time, right? I'm going to pause before I continue with the next step because that step is absolutely critical, right? Just to see if you, Jimmy, have any reflections on where we're at right now.
Yeah, 100%. Appreciate it. So, as you said, right, like what we used to do is sort of, yeah, rely on ChatGPT, and every time you go there and ask it, it would come up with something completely different each time. So to have it being done by Lovable, so much better, right? It knows the context, etc. Super interesting to see that approach, and amazing that it's in one spot now, and to have that sort of central sort of knowledge. In instances where you might be going into it with a certain idea about how you'd like it to look, because I saw the design document there as well.
Mhm.
Would you approach it in any other way if you had some sort of guidance you wanted to give it, or would you start here and then let it do its thing, and then sort of, perhaps prompt thereafter? What would
If
be
you know
your thinking?
exactly like pixel perfect how you want things to look like, this lesson looks completely different for you. The whole start of the process looks completely different, right? And we can practice that too, right? Let's do that as well, which is like, let's start a new project, but now we're more deliberate. We know how we want things to look like. There are two things that I do today, three actually. One is I will go and find something that I like, right? Let's say that these were my designs, or, I'm just looking for good inspiration on um, onboarding software, right? Onboarding app, right? Because that's what we're building today, essentially. I don't want Lovable to make these decisions for me. I want to make them for myself. If I liked this better, then I'm focusing on design first. All of my efforts would be on using this image as a reference. By the way, Lovable obviously accepts files as inputs. And when I say files, it's more than just images. It's um, code snippets, it's PDFs, it's whatever, right? My focus would be only on trying to get a pixel perfect design that looks like this and then shape it into an app. So your workflow completely shifts in that sense, right? Images are a great reference, but when you have just one image, I will say that's probably not perfect. What's even better is using code, and using code in the form of like either exporting things in your code from Figma, for example, or using code from another app. I've started using recently something called Variant. So variant.com, right? Very cool place to just design, but not build something that works, right? This is more of like, I want to find something that looks really good, and then I want to build an app out of it, right? Maybe you like this design, right? What I would do is like, I would click to explore it, for example, in here, and then I would just click here. See, there are like three little dots here in the very top. There's
Mhm.
a open in Lovable. There's a lot of options, but there's an open in Lovable. Basically, it's a prompt that you can copy. And I would say something like, I really love this design. Let's build an HR onboarding app relying specifically and exclusively on the design of this application, right? It doesn't matter really. What I'm doing is I'm giving Lovable a paste of that code. As you can see, I just pasted it right in there as a reference, and I'm just going to send that away instead. So what I'm solving for here first isn't the functionality. I can build that. If you want to have something look exactly the way you like it, your starting point is different than mine. The reason why I want to teach people how to start this way is because this is a good way to scale things, and this is a great way to like build with intention of long term dictating how things are going to turn out. However, if you are obsessed about designing things the right way, solve for that first by all means. Don't even begin this whole documentation process until you've nailed the design. A year ago, I would have said it differently. You remember it, Jimmy. My whole thing was make it work, then make it pretty. Now it's
Mhm.
actually changed quite a lot, because guess what? Lovable just works. So it's gonna work 100% of the time. So make it pretty first. You can always make it work later. Yeah, I've completely shifted from a
Wow.
year ago, and I'm probably going to shift again in 6 months from now, simply because my mind isn't fixated on being right or wrong. My mind is fixated on solving for the problem. I have
Mhm.
zero ego in play. I don't care if I'm right or wrong 6 months or a year from now. What I care is about, if this is a problem today, how am I solving for it? Right.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's how I solve for design, right? I give code snippets. I genuinely believe that if you can give Lovable code the way I just did here, you're going to get the best outcomes. If you
Mhm.
can't, at least give it an image or two or 10, but give it something. It's all about context.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing workflow. And would you then sort of later on then go back to the PRDs?
Yeah, then I would probably, as I'm nailing down the design, I would just go through this process again of like where I was here, which is when I have the designs nailed down, that's when I resend this prompt. I'm like, okay, we got it figured out. If this is a good baseline, let's build the PRDs. And that's where Lovable will take what it has built so far and build the design guidelines based on the code base, and not based on what I've done in here in the actual companion app. That's why,
Mhm.
like, as I said, you can use the companion app because it's quote unquote free. Like, I know that a lot of people are token sensitive and they're like, oh, I want to go through this exercise, but I don't necessarily want to spend Lovable credits. And speaking of which, plugging it in, like, Lovable always has promotions, so stay tuned. Valentine's Day promotion that we've ran was at 50% off and 50 credits for free. So, like, stay tuned for that stuff as well. But what I'm trying to say is this, that people maybe want to go through the flow and understand it and learn it without committing to a build. So that's why you can do it in here too. If I was to choose, I'd always build PRDs using Lovable, because as you said, Lovable has the entire context that it needs. Yeah. So,
Amazing.
all right.
So
Let's
good.
continue so that we don't go too deep into one thing only, because the most important stuff is yet to come. And I'd say the next two steps are absolutely critical because of one thing and one thing only. We built the docs, but so what? Is Lovable going to read them? Why would it read them? Why would it rely on them in the first place? Right now, it's just dead piece of meat, if you ask me, in your code base, because if you don't enforce them, you're not getting any value out of them. And these next two steps are what makes them powerful. The first one is building a central source of truth, because you reading 4 docs at a time is pretty crazy, right? And they're very long. Trust me, you don't want to read that, right? And neither does Lovable, if we're honest. Again, token memory window. Step one, let's go back to it. If it's finite, how can we compress it? This is the way to do it. What we want from Lovable is this. We wanted to read all 4 docs that we just created, then work through it together through objections if anything is wrong. Because guess what? Lovable can still be wrong, and maybe you've changed your mind as well. Maybe there are blind spots that are yet to be identified. So at this stage, I'm asking Lovable 2 things. Work with me. Let's walk each other through this. And by the end of it, if we're on the same page, create one source of truth in the form of a tasks document, where all of this is actually broken into something actionable, into tasks and subtasks that we can execute. And that's the best framework. That's how humans think, right? We've talked about building a house and talked about the walls and talked about the doors. But what is the order? How are we going to do this step by step? And that's what this next step is all about. So I'm going to copy this prompt and I'm going to go back to our project. And that's exactly what I'm going to send back in here to Lovable. And it's very simple. Read what you just created, right? And then tell me if you understand it. And then tell me if you have any objections. And if you don't, let's just continue. Let's just execute. Let's just talk about how to execute it, right? It doesn't have objections. It has clarifying questions, which is great, right? This is where you want to spend as much time as possible. People rush through this, and I will rush through it because we're on a podcast. I don't have enough time. But if we talked about, if you ask me, hey, Lazar, okay, how much time do you spend on all this prep work? I'd say I spend significant amount of time, yeah, hours, maybe days sometimes, right? Which is crazy. But then when I start executing, I execute in hours. Then it doesn't matter. Then I'm just like shooting it out. This is where you want to invest, because this determines everything, right? So in here, I would never advise you to do what I'm about to do. I just got to do it because I don't want us to spend too much time by being on the call. I would just let Lovable assume best practices and proceed with what it feels is best. You're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to be very deliberate at this step. So what I'm going to do is this. Use your best judgment based on everything that you know about this project and proceed with the build. Yeah. So again, use your best judgment, right? Just proceed with whatever you think is smartest. And Lovable will do that for me. In the meantime, let's go back to the other project and acknowledge exactly what I said will happen, which is Lovable is amazing at replicating the design. If you look at it, right, this was the original design. Not this one. I guess I probably clicked on the wrong one, but maybe it's this one, but it didn't populate. But it had all of these lines, and you can see that that's the original. And then when I go to Lovable, this is exactly how it looks like.
Yeah.
Pixel perfect. Only difference is this thing now works, and I can actually make it work from here. And this is where I'm like going to be like, okay, love the design. Let's build the PRDs. Let's do everything else further from here.
Yeah.
Right. So
Awesome.
yeah, as you can see here, while we were at it, Lovable built the tasks that I'm doing. Now you can ask me a valid question, which is, okay, Lovable is building all these docs. Where are they? Like, where are these docs even living? Right. And the place where they live can be found very easily. You're by default, when you look at Lovable's interface, you're always in this preview mode. You're looking at your app, but you can switch into multiple other ones. We don't have Lovable Cloud yet enabled. So, Lovable Cloud is basically a built-in backend that you can use. So there's nothing to see there, but we can always go into the code mode. And don't worry, we're not going to write any code today. We're just going to look through it. And as you can see, Lovable saved my files one by one in here. And most important one, which is the tasks file, right? And as you can see, structure the whole build into phases and all the tasks with the respective priority and description and everything else that I need to build this from start to finish. Again, this would take hours, days, weeks, months in regular building cycle. It took us, I don't know. I mean, I'm not looking at the clock, but I think it took us 30 minutes, 40 minutes. And that's mostly me talking. If I didn't talk so much, this would be super fast, right? Just click, 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 click. You can get this whole thing done in like 20, 25 minutes tops with all the waiting, right? But again, let's acknowledge where we're at before we continue, which is we had an idea, we structured it properly and explained it properly. Then we built supporting documentation, and now we've defined the source of truth. But again, my question is, so what? How am I going to make Lovable read all of this? I just built another document that is going to be forgotten very soon. And that is this very next critical step, which is if we know that Lovable's agent needs guidance and needs to know that this documentation is important, we have to always steer it in that direction. So what we're going to do is we're going to set project knowledge. And it's very important how we're setting it. The first step is you want to make sure that Lovable always reads it. That is defined by this first sentence. If you see, I said, before you begin any response, say I'm using knowledge, right? And we're going to see that in action just in a second. This statement can be Jimmy is awesome or Lazar needs to learn more. It doesn't matter. It's important though that you know what the statement is because you want to see it in the beginning of every response. And that way you know that this system is working. As you can see, my next instruction is always read the files. Use these two as a source of truth. Again, I'm trying to compress the amount of time and the amount of tokens the agent will need to spend on reading because guess what? I don't want it to spend any time reading to get context or as little as possible. I wanted to save the tokens for building because building is why I'm here in the first place. And then because I'm not in tune, I move very fast from here. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I want to know what was done, how to test it, and what's next. Because this process is pretty much autopilot from here. I just copied the prompt. And from here, I'm going to click on my project name. That is the top left corner of your screen. And then I'm going to go to settings. And then in the settings, I'm going to click under knowledge and I'm going to paste that right in here. That is your project knowledge. This is what your agent reads about your project before it does absolutely anything else, right? I'm going to click to update it. And then I'm just going to go back into my projects. I have a confirmation here as a toast that the instructions were updated. That's all I need to see to know that hopefully this system works. And then from here, I don't prompt anymore. A lot of people think that my biggest secret why I'm successful with Lovable is I have these magic prompts. I have these, crazy skills. I can build 7 projects at a time and never lose context. None of it is true. I just eliminate the need for myself to be a part of this in the first place by doing this next step. I just have one prompt that I perpetually send over and over, and that is read the tasks, check what's next, read relevant documentation, complete them, mark them as done, and then tell me what's next. And then I just do this. I just send this prompt, and then I send it again, and then I send it again, and then I send it again. And what's cool about Lovable now is that it has this new feature, which is called prompt queuing. You can just queue this in perpetuity. I can just continue and add this as many times as needed. And now I can go walk the dog, have some lunch, grab some coffee, and just let this run. right? I'm no longer necessary because I've set the system, I've set the design, I set the intention, I've set the context. And Lovable is following it. It says right here that it's using knowledge. And if, as long as I see that as the first sentence in the response, I know that the system is working. And as you can see, it's telling me what it did, how to test it, and what's next. And that's all I need to do. My role is no longer build prompting. My role is reading this. Right now, it's not that I just can just let this run forever. And let me pause the queue. You can pause the queue at any given point in time. I just want to pause it so that I can show people what I'm spending time on. I click on this details button, and that gives me this overview of what Lovable was editing and how it was thinking. There's this little expand all button, which is telling me how it's doing things, why is it doing it, how is it editing the files. I don't necessarily need to read the code edits. What I want to know is it marking tasks as done? Is it adding stuff that are important? And again, this project is super simple, so there's not a whole lot of reading for me to do. But as your projects get bigger, trust me, that's going to be gold for you to just understand when something is taking forever. Why is it taking forever? And a lot of times it's because I didn't give proper context. And that's what I'm trying to perfect, not prompts, providing context and understanding how do I continue to direct this agent in the right direction, really. Yeah. So
Amazing.
that is the first part of how I build. I'm going to pause for a second before we proceed on what's even more important for people, because I always say this is the most important. This is the most important, but everything is. But I think that this part was about starting the build on a good foundation. But even this isn't enough to actually build something amazing and big and robust. That's what's going to be defined in these next steps. But I'll just pause, Jimmy, to have the listeners hear your voice too, so that they don't think you went away for a coffee.
No, that's great, and it's just nice to see your process, right? Like literally following along how you do it, because myself, I'm guilty of that, of sort of diving into the prompting side of things and getting stuck into the build. But you've just shown there with a little bit of upfront work on the documentation side of things, how ultimately that is going to make life so much easier, where you get to a point where you just prompt and queue. As you said, you go go walk the dog, have a coffee, and you've got the best foundation to build an app that's going to be robust, that's going to work how you want it to.
Yeah.
So yeah, amazing to see that process there.
Yeah. I'm going to clear the queue now, speaking of which, because I think, we built a couple of things, right? And it's going well. I don't foresee any bugs. Like, I can click to add new hire, I can see my people in here. I can probably mark some of their tasks as completed. Very nice. Like it's going well, right? Which is easy. We're just getting started. But things will break. I can guarantee you that, because like no matter how good of a system you have in place, things break because of two reasons. One is there was something in your tasks that still wasn't properly defined, and Lovable then assumes things for you and in your behalf, and then sometimes things don't turn out the way you want them to be. AI, as being AI, even though the models are getting better, they hit snags like humans do, right? They stumble upon a rock and trip themselves. So there's an error somewhere happening from time to time, and that, if unidentified, can cause a lot of problems for you, right? I'm not going to teach you how to debug here. I'm going to teach you how not to have bugs in the first place, right? I think that's the critical piece. And one way to avoid bugs and avoid spending awful amount of time and credits finding them is by maintaining sources of truth. And what I mean by that is this: there are certain situations that will occur that you need to have documented so that they never repeat themselves again. And the way to document is by building a set of project rules. So building another document that I usually do, not maybe in the very beginning, but as things start to grow, I will not remember how everything got put together, especially because, as you see in the last step, I put things on autopilot. So sometimes I really don't know how things got put together, if I'm honest. I'm just letting the system run. But because it's a system ran built, I need to be able to document the rules as they happen, right? So this prompt right here sort of solves that in the sense that, like, for every choice, every naming convention, any design pattern, anything that's built, there's a rule and it is established and honored throughout the build. The sooner you start documenting these rules, the better, because then again, you'll have everything documented. You obviously, if you haven't built anything yet, there are no rules to document at all. So if people are asking, okay, well, how soon or how late should I do this? I'll just throw an arbitrary number. Do like 5 or 6 prompts and then do this. Because, if you do it after first prompt, there's nothing to build the rules around yet. So establish some rules first and then have Lovable document what those rules should be and how this file should be used, right? That is one piece, right? One piece is the rules. The other piece is the changelog, right? If we document the rules and we build, and we never document what was built, Lovable, or you won't be able to remember it being built. Yes, we have tasks, and I will acknowledge that we have these tasks in here and that, we should execute all of them. But guess what's going to happen? You're going to get a new feature idea and you're going to build new PRDs for it, and you're going to build new tasks document for it, and another one, and another one, and another one. If you go through 4 or 5 iterations of this, the original, the first tasks, they're going to be long gone. So there will be no history that you've actually built it. So a lot of people tell me, oh, well, why wouldn't I just then build 100 different tasks, 1, tasks 2, tasks 3? I'm okay. I mean, it's fine. But I like to keep one centralized source of truth for everything. And the best way to do it is doing the old way. Every developer has done it in history. You maintain a changelog. So you just copy a prompt like this and you go into Lovable. In same way we built the rules document, let's build a changelog document. Why not? I mean, you're not going to die or your project is not going to be bigger or whatever or harder to maintain. It's actually going to be easier to maintain if you have a proper documenting structure. So again, rules define sources of truth of how stuff is supposed to be built. Changelog is saving what was built in the first place, right? Mm. Now, there's this final layer, which is the documentation center. And the reason why I built the documentation center is very simple. Me switching over between preview and code and then reading these is not the most user-friendly way. I like Markdown, but I don't like it that much. You know what I mean? Like, this doesn't read that well. I don't see the headings. It's not easy for me to scan through these pages. Yes, I can use Control F and find whatever I want to, right? You can use this functionality. You can update things from here, by the way, as well. Like, if you're in code mode, like, you don't need to write code. You can just delete stuff and then click save and they will be saved. And by the way, that's free. Like, a lot of people are unaware that, like, if you make changes yourself in Lovable, you can click save and consume 0 credits while doing so. And it's pretty cool, right? To do that. As you can see here, it says that I made a visual or manual edit and it cost me 0 credits, right? So you can do that too. But what I'm trying to say is I don't like reading that over words. So I built a documentation center instead. What documentation center is basically all these docs that we created, we're actually going to build them as a page, right? As something that you, a developer, or somebody else can read too. Because guess what? Maybe this will scale to a point where you no longer want to be the one building it. How are you going to hand it off to someone? How are you going to hand it off to a human, right? Yes, a human can go into your code and read it, but why? Why wouldn't you just build the data and have it documented in here, right? This is how you can switch between pages at Lovable as well, right? By clicking on this header nav bar. This is how you can switch between previews, because Lovable is always trying to build things in a mobile-friendly manner too. So just by clicking on this little device toggle, we go from desktop, tablet to mobile. We see that looks pretty decent on mobile. Yes, we can optimize the views. Obviously, anything is optimizable. The cool part is that Lovable can do all of this for you, right? So what I'm doing now is I'm just building a documentation center page structure. And when I'm done with that, Lovable will again say, so what? You built 3 new pieces of architecture. Why would I care about them? Your project instructions are not mentioning them. When I go to knowledge, right? If I go there, is there a mention of anything that you're talking about? And the answer is no. And if there isn't a mention of it, Lovable will ignore it. And that's only normal. If I don't tell you, Jimmy, you should do this, why would you do it? Right? So, same like with humans, you need to provide context and the reason why Lovable would even care about it. And that's what this last prompt is about. It's actually another knowledge base update, which is going from here and focusing only on these files and these files only to focus on this new structure, which is reading and maintaining rules, change log alongside the main two sources of truth, while also making sure that we have it written properly inside of the UI itself, right? I have to wait for the agent to finish building to be able to update this, but let me try and snag it away, right? And as you see, I always said, like, when you're done with tasks, now also documented in changelog, if you made any massive decisions, document that inside the rules. And then again, as usual, tell me what was done, how to test it, and what's next. That's important just for me because I want to maintain context as well. But that's the final piece, which is now that we built all of this stuff, Lovable knows that it has tasks that it needs to execute. As it executes those tasks, it's marking them as completed for its own context and my context. It's adding everything to the changelog. It's building pages for me to read or another human, and it's just telling me how to test things and what's next, right? And that's how you solve most of the context issues, most of the prompting issues. And those were the two problems we came in today to solve. And the final two pieces are just a bonus, but the core is these first seven, really. If you do this right, you've pretty much set yourself up for success in the long run. I have a very strong belief that if you're diligent with this system and you regularly update the documentation, that you're probably, number one, not going to have almost any bugs to solve. And then number two, that you're going to actually save massive amounts of credits, because I know what the comment is already. The first comment is, it's easy for you. You have unlimited credits, so you can do this. You can waste these credits in perpetuity. What I'm doing is I'm investing ahead. I almost guarantee you that you're gonna save hundreds, if not thousands, of credits just by doing this first, right? It's gonna cost you credits to do it, but it's well worth the spend. As you can see here, while I was talking, Lovable built this documentation portal, which did not exist, and actually documented everything that was built so far, right?
That's also, and just on that, when it comes to, because obviously this use case is sort of, someone working within a company doing an internal sort of HR
Yeah.
system.
Yeah.
What's the role of this sort of, I guess, maintaining it long term, right? So yeah, as you said, some of the pushback would be bugs, etc. So great that you use it for the build, but if it's truly going to replace an internal system, then what do those sort of needs and requirements look like in maintaining it more long term?
Yeah, but this is pretty much the essence. Like, again, when your project gets bigger, let's say you want to change something in the dashboard, but we're like 100 prompts in, right? If we have everything properly documented in the architecture, for example, of how things relate to another, Lovable's agent will know immediately where to find that page. It will know immediately which dependency is potentially responsible for the problem and immediately start actually fixing it. This is a steering mechanism, right?
Hmm.
There's a couple of great reads on this, but it's like, again, finite amount of resources to complete a certain task. You doing this for a company level build or your $1 million project or any other project is useful because of context preservation purposes. And then again, I like to think that Lovable is great when you collaborate. You can share your project access with people, invite them to your workspace, even if they don't have a Lovable account. They will not consume credits because you own the build. So you can invite somebody that's on a free plan and they can still build alongside you. They will consume your builder credits. But like, what I'm always thinking is another human in the loop, another person, especially if we work in an organization, right? How will others be able to know where did I last stop? Well, this is probably the way. At least from like, obviously, again, as I said, you can skip the whole docs pages thing. You don't have to do that step and you can just read these. But I just like doing it this way better. That's just me. This is my personal system. As I said, today's going to be about how I'm building. Is this the best way to build? God, no. There's probably many other people that have a better way that's more suited for you. This is the best way for me, right? And my hope is that it helps someone, but I'm not saying that this is the only way to do things.
Appreciate that. And as you said, right, you already showcased just two different ways you can start the project. So there's so many different ways to get to the end result you're looking for.
A
But it's
million
just
percent.
to see your process, right? As the professional vibe coder at Lovable, to see your process and to have access to these prompts to make it so much easier to actually step through. Amazing.
I'd say the final piece on the context side, because that's I guess where I want to wrap it up with, is something that you can now do that's pretty amazing and pretty cool. Lovable now has cross project knowledge. What that means is that if I like something in this project and I want it in here, I can actually reference that, right? So it doesn't have to be just stuff that's in this code base. It can be stuff in another project's code base, right? So this project here is called onboard flow. Okay. The only thing that I have to do is this: tag onboard flow. And it was right here. And this will provide Lovable with the reference that I want something from there. I can say, let's try and design the intake form for a new hire based on what you can find in the design of this project. Ideal workflow isn't, oh, I want everything from this project. Let's be realistic. This project already has a lot of files. You can't just bring in everything. You can bring pieces that you like. I just picked one small piece, right? Ideally, you take a footer, a header, testimonial section. But like what's cool about it is that what you can do is you can invest a lot of time building one really good looking project and then just pull stuff from it into other builds, right? Micro elements, buttons, sections, you know what I mean? Like cards. So the cool part here is that I can just tag a project, or within my project, if I want to edit something, I can tag a file, right? In this case, I want to work on the dashboard page. I just got to tag it, right? I think that's super powerful because, again, it shortens this need and the gap between the context that the agent needs before it takes action. I think that's the best definition of success is that one sentence that I oftentimes repeat. Like that success in vibe coding is not dependent on what the agent does, but what it sees before it takes action, right? And you're just making it see faster with this workflow. So one way of tagging files in a project you're working on is by using this add function. The other one is using visual edits. Visual edits are another way that you can make edits to your project without consuming any credits. As you can see, when I click on Visual Editor and I hover over different elements, I can select them. And if they're text, I can make changes to them, or I can, do a bunch of stuff. And if I'm the one making the change, it will not consume any credits. The reason why I like to use Visual Editor, though, is to tag files that I want to change, not to edit them myself, but to, again, give Lovable the flashlight. So I'm going to try to select these cars. And if you can't select elements, you can always click to select parent, and it will just expand the section as it did right now for me, right? So I'm going to do this, select parent, or I'm going to select these two cards. It doesn't matter. What I'm trying to show you is this. When I hover over that selection, it tells me which file and which part of that file is the one that's affected and that you want to change. Again, context, reference as much as possible. I do even a bigger overkill on top of that if needed be. I take screenshots of things that I want to change, and I even sketch on top of those screenshots, such as this, right? So if I wanted to change some, I actually screenshot it and sketch over it, right? And people will say, well, that's a lot. To me, it's not, because yes, it consumes my time, but I know if I want to make a change right here, I know I'm gonna nail it, and Lovable will too. Because guess what? I've spent my resources, so it doesn't have to spend its resources to pinpoint the change that it's supposed to make. So as projects are small, it's very easy to manipulate through the build without doing this. But I'm trying to teach people how to build something massive. And when you build something massive, if you can do this, if you can reference properly, if you can document properly, if you can plan properly, I mean, then at that point, anything is possible. I've built massive projects, trust me, massive projects with doing what I'm doing right now in front of us. But just rinsing and repeating. I didn't build massive projects with just 4 PRDs. A big project may require 104 PRDs and doing this tasks motion over and over again. But it's possible as long as you maintain proper context and you reference things the right way. As I said, use the code editor, use the visual editor, and use the sketch screenshot tag flow, right? And then when you're done, make sure to invite your team members to help you and participate, and make sure to publish your app to the public and tag me. Tag me, DM me. A lot of people are sending me messages. If you want to DM me, send me a Lovable app link. Don't send me anything else. Those DMs I always open and interact with, right? So share and work through your builds, right? And that's the flow. This is it. These are the secrets. If you want, like before I kind of hand it over to you again, people that want to learn more, people that do feel like this is a good beginning, but they want more resources, I've left you some goodies, some prompt directories from Lovable or from Felix, who's our head of design. I left a lot of design toolbox tools that I use, a lot of libraries, a lot of places that you can go to and find inspiration for what good looks like. And then some recommended reading again, mostly from Felix, because as I said, my personal take is that design is what really, really sets AI generated projects apart from one another. So just really educating on yourself on how to think about design and how to prompt for good designs is what I think is a meta skill that matters the most. And, hopefully when you're done with all of this, you're going to click on this button and go to lovable.dev and build another project and another project and another project. Just don't stop building, because you can watch as many of my videos as you like. You're not going to learn the half of it unless you roll up your sleeves and sort of do it yourself. So
Amazing.
that's the whole process.
That's the whole process in just over an hour. And
All
and
right.
you know
It's
know how to build, which
I
is
was going to
great.
ask you about the time. Like, where are we time wise on the delivery of the whole lessons? And I'm trying to compress it and squeeze it within an hour. And I think that's probably the right amount of time to just cover everything. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, you've gone through so much there, and as you said, it's a sneak peek into your process, and there are many different ways to do it. But for us to have that guidance there to actually follow along best practice, so insightful. Thank you for taking us through it. Thank you for building that resource. You said it's free. You don't need to credits, right? So really appreciate it. We'll obviously have the details in the description and everything like that. But yeah, where Lazar, can people follow you and DM you, as you said? Where can they get in touch?
Yeah, the best place is LinkedIn. I'm most responsive there these days. I have a YouTube channel where I'm doing or I have done the 28 Days of Lovable series at, where, this is just 1 day or 2 days of that. So like there's 28 days total. That's where I'm digging deeper and diving deeper into the design, into the database setup, into security, publishing. Like there are nuances to everything. To be fair, you're not going to learn um, to work like me in just 1 hour. It took me much more than that. So don't expect that there aren't other things to learn. So yeah, I'd say probably those two places, LinkedIn and YouTube.
Perfect. And as you said, the 28 days resource will also link to a great follow on, as you said. Any final words
I
for the
mean,
audience?
my hope is that most people took the link and started building alongside me immediately. If they haven't, they have to do it now, or else I failed. I did nothing. If I didn't inspire people to try and start working on their ideas and projects, then I massively failed. Again, want to encourage people to send me whatever they're building, and want to encourage people to think about this as a serious potential for something new in their lives. To a lot of people's are maybe afraid of what's coming with AI. A lot of people are thinking AI is going to take my job and stuff like that. Well, I hope that I've given you an idea or more. Maybe I've even given you a path of how you can recreate what I was able to create for myself. And then maybe there's somebody watching this and they are also knowledgeable about all of it. And they're thinking, how can I contribute? I'm fascinated with what Lovable is, and I'm fascinated with the mission. I'm fascinated with Lazar's passion for it. Lovable is hiring all over the world, all over the place, dozens of different roles. If you feel like you're the right fit, if you want to be a part of this amazing company, an amazing mission of empowering builders of all skills and all backgrounds all around the world, join us.
Amazing, amazing. There we go. That's the challenge you've laid out, and what a way to end it. So, thank you, Lazar. It's been amazing.
Thank you,
Appreciate it.
Jimmy, and I hope I inspired you to build something new as well. And you being paving the
Absolutely.
way by sharing more of the amazing ideas that you've had. As I said, I want to close it out with just saying that I'm very happy that we got a chance to do this, because for the two of us, this journey has I think come to a full circle of me actually doing the dream thing that I'm doing, and hopefully this is also a dream come true for you. Building a media company, podcast, and being a founder and everything. And I do want to also take a moment to thank Pat. I don't know if he's going to watch the episode or anything. I just, he got us
Yeah,
together. He was also pretty critical in my journey when I was first starting off and was not quite sure that what I was doing made any sense. Everybody, if you don't have good ideas on what you want to build, go to Starter Story. Right? Starter Story is an amazing, amazing community, an amazing place to find great ideas that not just are good ideas on paper, but are great ideas that are successful. And I think a lot of people paved their way showing what's possible. Just go on Lovable, build your own version, your own mini version of a successful Starter Story project.
absolutely. Yeah, shout out to Pat. That's been yeah, a huge part of, as you said, bringing us together, part of the journey. And yeah, hopefully I'll be the first in your DMs with another lovable app. But it's been great, Lazar. You've inspired me, so no doubt the same with the audience. So
Awesome.
thanks for that
All
again.
right.
See you soon.
Thank you.